Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Christy Kalevsky here from the training department. Victoria Thomas is with me as well. And I'm excited to tell you that we have a guest speaker today. Chase Deisler from the Carmel office is going to be kind of tuning in and sharing some of his best practices when it comes to prep work and dialogues on the listing side. So with that, let's go ahead and get going. You guys should all see my screen. And this is the third part of our List to Last series. So thanks to all of you who have tuned in for all of those sessions. Today's number 3, and we have one more sort of wrapping up with part 4 next week. So look for that link to register in the buzz. It will also go out today when we send our follow-up information. So a couple quick housekeeping items. All of our attendees on the call today are muted, but we do like these sessions to be as interactive as possible. So do me a favor and locate your question pane in your GoToWebinar panel. And any questions that you have, go ahead and type those in. Victoria will be monitoring those and we'll throw those questions out to myself or to Chase throughout the call today. We will go probably the full hour, so get ready to do that. And Chase, I do see you. Hello, good morning. Awesome. Morning. Okay, let's get right into it. So quick recap. We've had this slide for all of our sessions. Why strive to be a strong listing agent? It's so important, especially in this market right now. We know that those agents that do have listings are the ones that are going to last. We want those agents to be you guys. So quick recap, obviously you have a contract. So that means that you will get paid, hopefully at the end of that transaction. That's a great thing. You don't have buyers that might accidentally connect with some other realtor out there and you lose them. You have more control over your schedule. Another really important thing right now, especially when all of us parents are a little nervous about what's going to happen this school year, control over that schedule is going to be key. Listings, of course, generate leads. So that's another reason that we want to be strong listing agents. You have more control over the neighborhoods that you work in, the clients that you serve, all of that good stuff. We want to work with people that we want to work with, right? Not those crazy jerks out there. Open houses gives you a different way to look at open houses. So those nosy neighbors that we all inevitably get in our open houses, those are great people to add to our database because just because they might not be a seller today, they may in the future. So it helps you build up that database. Your efforts, of course, matter more. We all know that buyers are missing out on houses right now. So lots and lots of efforts that may not go anywhere, or it might just take more. Whereas with listings, of course, the work that you do pays off. And maybe not no more emergencies, but fewer of those emergencies and fewer of those calls to drop everything and run out and see that brand new house so it can get snapped up before someone else gets it. So that's sort of why we are doing this whole session. And here's what you can expect us to cover today. We want to help you be prepared. So what to do prior to that listing appointment that you're going on, to Zoom or not to Zoom. So are we going to do this listing consultation or presentation virtually, or are we going to go do it in person? I'll let Chase talk a little bit about that in a second. We want to help you really dive deep into your seller's goals and wants and needs and their understanding of the process. That's going to be really important, and we're going to focus heavily on that today. Chase is also going to share some of his tried and true dialogues when it comes to questions that a seller might ask or an objection that they may have. And of course, anything, especially when we get to that section that you want him to field, type that in. And I'm sure he will happily kind of share his thoughts on that to help you with your dialogues. We're also going to spend a little time at the end talking about some supporting materials that you have available. Some of that will be a repeat. I've talked a lot about like buy-side tool and agent metrics throughout this series. So we'll revisit that as far as how it fits in to being prepared and all of that good stuff at the listing appointment. And then finally, we're going to just kind of tie it all up with a nice little bow and make sure you guys have an understanding of how to sort of tailor each of these approaches or each of these presentations for your sellers. So let's do it. So Chase, I'm going to kick it off to you for this slide. So this is all about being prepared. And when you and I were sort of preparing for this training today, you talked a lot about what you do sort of in advance of that listing appointment. So why don't you kind of talk through what your process is?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, hello everyone. Hopefully you all can hear me clearly and see. One of the things that Christy and I talked about again as we were prepping for this meeting was prepping for your listing and what type of conversations to have or what types of questions to ask on the phone prior to meeting in person. And I think the biggest thing to understand is that the clients would expect that, or ideally, if they have any relevancy to this process, the hope is that they know you're going to gather as much information as possible. And the more questions you ask up front, it not just prepares you, but it generates a thought process for them to be cultivating what other questions they may want to ask when you meet them in person, or whether it's on another Zoom call, or however you decide to establish that second appointment. But gathering a lot of initial information specifically around their motivation, I think, is one of the bigger things that will help you prepare for what that meeting is going to look like. Because otherwise, you're just going to show up and it's going to be a lot of guesswork. When you get there to the listing, you're trying to figure out what they want or what their needs are. And it's almost like you're playing catch up in that first, or in the personal, like one-on-one meeting. And so again, if we're gathering this information specifically revolving around their motivation prior to that, then when you get to the listing appointment, you're going to be more effective. You can get a lot more knocked out in a shorter time frame, and you look professional. You look like you know what you're doing, and there's not a lot of scrambling and you trying to figure out where they want to go and what their understanding of the market is and what their intentions are. So again, finding those things out. Is this, hey, are we just gathering information at this initial meeting, or are you wanting to be listed and on the market in a certain amount of days? And if so, can you tell me a little bit about the current condition of your home, or if there's anything you're planning on doing prior to listing that you think I should know about. So those are a couple of things that I'll do to gather that, again, information, just understanding their motivation. One of the things that I feel like I've noticed, and maybe anybody out there can testify to this, but it feels like there's a lot of tension, maybe a lot of urgency or hurriedness, and they may not 100% know why. Sometimes maybe there's something out there that they're interested in, and they realize like, hey, if I want this other property, I'm gonna have to move really quickly to get my property ready to go. So again, I think there are things you can do to be tailored in that approach as well on the front side. So again, questions on timelines, their expectations, and their motivation would be, I think, crucial in this market where we don't necessarily have the luxury of time to go do the first listing appointment, gather the information, then go back to a second one and kind of work through the process that way. So maybe one of the things that can be handled is the initial phone call is maybe half of the listing appointment, where we're just really trying to gather as much information as possible.
Awesome. And Chase, how long does that initial phone call, like how much time should we expect to spend on the phone with the seller in advance of that first meeting?
I think a lot of it may have to do with how many questions they have as well, because I have some clients who they just want to get the meeting over with, meaning they want you out there as soon as possible. So it might be a 15-20 minute phone call. If it's something where they have a lot more questions and there's a lot more curiosity to the process, or I guess one of the things I've noticed is with a lot of these folks that are getting ready to sell, they may have a property or two in mind that they're really interested in. So what happens is we shift gears back and forth a little bit just to keep them engaged and to keep them excited about the process. That's one of the things that I try to focus on is that how can I make all parts of this process as fun and as exciting for them as possible, because that tends to take some of the stress out of the situation. Then that hurriedness and that panic that I think a lot of people are feeling or experiencing, we can help relieve that a little bit. So if that's the case, if they're asking questions on other properties out there, how this all works, getting in touch with a lender, because again, these are all things that if we're scheduling it, if it's Wednesday today and I'm scheduling a meeting with them on Friday as a pre-listing appointment, there might be some things I'd like them to start knocking out between now and Friday, meaning talking with a lender to make sure they're certain on, you know, what they're getting into. The other thing would be is again, do me a favor, make a list of everything that you feel like needs to be done in order for your home to be ready to list. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing things in this market under this same, I guess, realm, but what I'm seeing is everybody's wanting top dollar. And everybody who wants top dollar is curious to know how that's going to happen. Or the ones that aren't curious to know how that's going to happen, they should be, because those are usually the people who may have unrealistic expectations. Where, you know, hey, my neighbor's property sold for, you know, maybe 5–10% over what anybody in the neighborhood thought it was going to. Well, we look at your neighbor's house and they earned that. They had done, you know, a full remodel, and all of their mechanicals are updated. And so as far as top dollar goes, the market was willing to give them that. If you can't represent something in that similar capacity, then we may have to make a little bit of adjustment on our expectations or our timelines or our price, but those are some things we need to talk through. So I think those are important to establish expectation and motivation in that initial phone call.
I love that. Thank you. And we talked about, and we'll get into pricing maybe a little bit more in later slides, but the bullet point about comps, you know, you as an agent, of course, are reviewing those in advance, but you don't bring those to the table on that initial meeting, and maybe just touch on that briefly as to why.
Yeah, I think, well, the pushback on it is I think everybody wants to know right away, what is my home worth? The other part of the pushback I think involved in that is consumers have a lot more access to information than what they did 5, 10, 15 years ago. So that doesn't mean it's the right information. That doesn't mean it's most accurate. That doesn't mean they know how to decipher it appropriately, but it means they have the information. So they're going to expect you to have that similar type of information, or obviously even more advanced. One of the things that one of the questions I ask, not on the phone call, but usually in the in-person meeting or interview, is what do you think your home is worth? And so the question I get in return from that is, well, isn't that your job? And, or the comment, I guess, is, isn't that your job? And of course it is, but my rebuttal to that is, yeah, it is, but I know most people tend to know about what their home is worth. So it kind of puts that pressure back on them just to say, well, you probably have a pretty good idea. My guess is you've been keeping an eye on things. Just tell me what you think that is. Because I'm always curious, and it's very helpful, not in me determining the value. I'm going to create that on my own. I'm going to go do extensive research to make sure that I come back with a very precise value based off of how I do my job. But it helps me understand the expectations of the client, so that if I need to work really hard at resetting their expectations, that's a part of my game plan. And when I'm prepping my information, if they seem pretty reasonable with where their value is, I know that that's not something I'm going to have to spend as much time on having to explain that part of the process to them. So when I am there in person, I don't bring comps with me. As I think you put here in the notes, a review, but don't bring them, meaning I think it's extremely important to have relevancy to their neighborhood, their general area, and maybe a handful of properties that are either on the market or pending or sold recently, so that if and when they speak to those, you have familiarity. However, I would strongly advise to not bring comps with you and not talk about them specifically. And one of the, I guess, the things that I use in that is, whether I'm close with this person and it's only been a year or two since they purchased, or 3 or 4 years, or it's somebody that I've never been in your home before, I don't know everything that you've done to the home. And there's a lot of things that go into account when you're valuing a property at the height of a market. I think we have to be extra diligent so that we can squeeze as much money out of these as possible, but it's done appropriately. So sharing that with the client is, hey, I'm going to go through and take lots and lots of notes. I'm just going to, as much as information as you can share with me about improvements you've done to the property, anything you know about it, valuable information, maybe other information about the neighborhood or the area that people would appreciate. And then I take all of that back and do a lot of research, and then we'll come back and we'll get together as soon as they want to get back together. Whether if they want to do it in 24 hours, great. If it's something they want a couple days for based off a schedule or anything else, that's fine too. But if I'm prepping for a listing appointment, again, in the initial phone call, I'm going to gather that information to know, are they going to want to meet with me again 24 to 48 hours after this appointment, or is this maybe a week later? And I can be prepping my schedule and rearranging things in anticipation of that secondary meeting as well.
Awesome. And for those of you on the call, hopefully some of you attendees have watched the pricing video that we have as a supplement. And just sort of to underscore what Chase just talked about knowing the comps, but not necessarily bringing them at that first appointment. If you watched that video, you'll remember that Steve Thompson, who did the pricing video, made sure that he doesn't even start talking about a price for a home until he's confident that he has articulated his value as a realtor and that client has, dictated that, yes, we are going to work together. So there's already that comfort level there. And then we start talking price once that's already established. So, two different sort of approaches, but the same underlying meaning there. So thank you, Chase, for talking about that. We also talked the other day about, do we do this virtually, this listing presentation, or do we do it in person? Obviously, it's going to be a lot easier to build rapport when you're sitting across the table from somebody, but walk us through maybe some initial questions that you start asking the seller on that initial phone call to gauge their comfort level.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I think this is such a great opportunity for all of us to be more empathetic, generally speaking. Everything that's going on with the pandemic that we've dealt with and everything that I just starting to, I guess, uncover with some of our society's wounds, I guess, that a lot of people are experiencing, that I think it's only important and fair for us to ask those questions. Hey, how are you doing? How is this affected you? Are you okay to meet in person? If we do meet in person, what does that look like for you? Is there any part of this process that you have concerns or questions about? Tell me, are you okay to meet in person? What does that look like for you? What does that mean to you? And if we're to list your property in the next couple of weeks, what questions do you have about the current conditions of the economy and the market and things going on with the coronavirus? So all of that, I think, again, only shows your professional nature at realizing, like, look, I want to be sensitive to you. And the more that we can get on the same page and gather an understanding, the smoother this experience is going to be for you as well.
I love that. And, if they do have concerns, I think that last bullet point is important, knowing what those are, but kind of prepping them that when showings start to happen and we do go live, like, there will likely be people in and out of your home, and kind of setting them up for that expectation as well.
Yeah, cool. And again, part of setting that up, I would say, is just maybe giving them a couple of examples. Hey, here are a handful of ways people are handling things, whether they're just not overly concerned about it, and we have, a sign and we have a waiver to sign, and we expect the agent to do their best who's showing the property to take care of them and their clients in this process. Or there are maybe 2 or 3 further steps that you can take to have a little bit more control and a little bit more certainty in the nature of how the showings will go and how those interactions will go.
Awesome. I love that. Victoria, do we have any questions so far about like this prep piece? And if there's anything that we're going to address later, like dialogues, we might want to hold that. But just as far as setting up, getting prepared as a listing agent for that initial meeting, does anything come in our question pane?
No, I haven't had anything yet.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Cool. So let's transition a little bit, Chase. So now we're there. So now we're ideally in the home with that potential client. And you're so brilliant at this, the power of asking really, really good questions to get the information that you need. So how do you take it a step deeper than you did on that initial conversation to get all the information that you need when you're in the home?
Yeah. Yeah, I think again, one of the biggest things for me is gathering information regarding their motivation and timelines, like you've got here. That I think is huge because there's so many different scenarios, so many different potential things that a homeowner is going to try to accomplish in this market. So helping them understand what to expect with all of the urgency and tension in the market, and trying to still make it somewhat fun, or as fun as possible, I think is crucial, so that they want to partner with you in the experience. That's, I think, a part of this, is that how can we help them see this as a partnership? Another thing that I'm starting to notice is that as properties move quickly, you either have a homeowner or a seller that highly values realtors and understands that, hey, this is, if I want the best bang for my buck, this is what I need to do. And then you have, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got some of those people who just go, hey, I know homes are selling overnight for over list price in my neighborhood. Why do I need you? And they may not ask that question specifically, but I do think it's important to understand that's going through most people's minds. So what are we saying to show our value in a very knowledgeable and a very appropriate way? It's not like we're saying, hey, you need me. I think it's more of a, hey, I want to show you why you should want me. Because again, I don't know that I like the approach of, you need a realtor. Nobody needs a realtor. You're not required to use an agent to sell your home. And in a market like this, if you can get away with it, this is one of those where you absolutely could. And so being transparent with people, I think that's worked better for me than anything else. It's just letting them know, like, hey, this is what's going on in the market. What questions do you have? What fears do you have about this process? What areas do you feel like you're very confident in? What things do you think you need to utilize me the most for? And so again, I think that helps people let their guard down a little bit. It relieves some of the tension of, do I need a realtor? Or I think maybe to the point of who you were speaking of previously, who doesn't give like value information until they know they're working with a client. Not to speak negatively towards that, I don't like that approach because it seems to create more of a control. And I think maybe that the consumer might feel that in one way, shape, or form. And that's the last thing I want. My goal in this is to help them see this as a partnership, and that I'm assisting them in this process, and that they hired me for my knowledge, my information, and my professional nature, so that I can take them from where we are and get them to the closing table. So for me, that tends to be a lot more successful. But again, it kind of depends on what your personality style is too.
And would you say, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You're fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what are some of your favorite questions to ask when you're sitting across the table from someone to kind of get this information out of them?
Yeah, so the tell me why I'm here today, that's not mine, but I love it. And so I've used that before, but I'll tell you for certain that didn't come from me. Another one that I think is important is, what are your expectations? And tell me maybe about if you know it's somebody who has sold a home before. Like, one of the things I'm realizing is a lot of my sellers in this market are not the second. It's not like it's their second move. These are previous first-time home buyers who are making their very first sale. So this is a brand new experience for them. Or it's somebody who has done this multiple times and they have quite a bit of experience. So in that, those are I think the two people that we really need to ask that question. Tell me about your expectations. Tell me about, if you have a previous experience, how did it go? Do you expect it to go the same? This market is not like one that I've ever seen. So because of that, I think we need to have that conversation, so that if their expectations are from what they've experienced 5, 10, however many years ago, I don't think anything is the same. Lending is different. I mean, most people have no idea what an escalation clause is. So going through that process and understanding why that could be valuable and why in some scenarios it has no value at all. So I think there's a lot of different hypothetical scenarios that we can talk through with these folks. And that alone, I believe, presents a ton of value, because us educating them on potential scenarios and experiences does not give them expertise in that. It actually might make them go, whoa, this is a lot. There's a lot that could happen. I need a good experienced agent. So those would be important. Again, when you get into certain things about like talking about what can happen in the inspection process, what can happen in the appraisal process, because those two things are massive deal breakers in this market, or potential deal breakers. So how do you address where your value is in after you get in contract? Because there's so much more to just listing your home, throwing a sign in the yard, and waiting for the offers to roll in. So again, I think asking what their expectations are in their previous experiences.
Awesome. Love that. And I think the next slide. So yeah, we talked a lot about this already, you know, that question of expectations, what has been your past experience, what maybe concerns do you have? And then I loved the conversation we had about, you know, once you know sort of where they're at and where they're coming from and where they want to go, how do you help guide them on getting that top dollar? Because you're absolutely right. Sellers are hearing that their neighbor sold overnight over list price, and that might be what they want too. So how do you guide them in that space?
Yeah, well, first of all, again, I think that's an expectation thing as well. So what I do to begin with, as far as guiding, is I walk them through what I like to do. And if I were selling my home, what I would want the process to look like. So for instance, I use a staging consultant. So if you don't do that, that's fine. You don't have to. But the beauty in that for me is it shows all of these people that I'm working with that I have a strong team of people, associated other professionals who I enlist and pay for to help take care of this, so that they do get top dollar, so that we are being as thorough and diligent as possible. But I think it's also important to understand that not everybody wants that, or not everybody can handle that. There may be people out there that go, no, I don't want you having all these people coming in and me working the next 2 to 3 weeks at getting my home in tip-top shape. I just want to sign in the yard. I want to make a quick buck and move on. And so especially if they're interviewing multiple other agents and you haven't established that maybe the way I do things is not what they want, and then the next guy comes in and says, yeah, we can have it listed for you tomorrow, I haven't done my job, because I haven't explained that just because this is the way I prefer to do things, there are other ways to do it. And again, that tailored approach is valuable. So number one, finding out, hey, here's what I like to do. I like to bring a staging consultant in so that we can tweak a few things. She or I do not expect you to spend a ton of money in this process. However, getting your home ready to sell does take a little time, and for most people it takes a little bit of money. So let's talk through that to determine, like, again, I like to know what are you willing and able to do as far as time and budget goes. And from there, I like to talk them through, once we get this staging evaluation, what I usually tend to do is go over it with you. We can then come up with, from the evaluation, what you're willing and able to do, and then also what type of timelines we might be dealing with from the time you can have that stuff ready. And then third, talking about inside of those timelines, getting the professional photographers set up to come in, because they're usually, for who I work with, about a week to 2 week out on their schedule. So again, I want to be proactive in letting my clients know that there are pieces that have to fall into place, not only in order for us to get your place in the right condition, but to get it listed as quickly as possible. So what I usually explain there is, when I have an understanding on what you're willing to do to get the home ready to sell, that's when I can finalize your value. Because otherwise, what you're asking me to do is create a value for you given your current condition of your home. So if the current condition of your home is exactly how you want it to be when we sell, that's the value that I'll help create for you. But in this market, a lot of buyers are willing to pay quite a bit more for us creating a experience for them, as opposed to just looking at a property online and it falling in line with all the rest of them out there. I'm seeing lots of beautiful places go for more than what they probably should because sellers have done that. Their sellers and their agent have created more of an experience for these home buyers, and the market's shifted in that regard. So again, asking that question, is that what you want to do? Do you want this process to go as easy and quick as possible for you? And if so, we need to be proactive on the front end.
Yep, I love that. Awesome thoughts there. Okay, let's shift gears to dialogues. And if any of you are on the call have gone through LEAP, you know Chase is a master at some of these dialogues. We're going to talk after the dialogue section about some supporting tools that can sort of help you in this area. But I just always like to kind of throw these out to Chase and sort of see what he would say or how he would respond to a would-be seller. So that first question, maybe they're interviewing multiple agents. Why list with you, Chase?
Yeah. Well, hopefully you're prepared for that. A lot of you are prepared for that already. And I would use a lot of who you are and how you have molded that into the real estate game as to why list with you, because I think we view who we are differently than what consumers view who we are and what we do and what we are. And again, I think it's important to understand how do they view realtors? How do they see you as compared to your competition? Because if you don't know how you stand out, they're probably not going to know either. And so for me, one of the bigger things is I try to be really diligent and thorough and proactive on this front end of the process, because one of the things that I continue to say or reiterate through that first listing appointment is my goal is to get you as much money as possible in as shortest amount of time as possible. Whenever I and you, my seller and I are on the same page with that, it goes the best. They realize like, hey, it takes more than just Chase to get your home sold. You're gonna have to put some work into this. We're gonna have to talk through things. And a lot of these decisions are not my decisions. I'm just guiding you along the way, giving you what I feel like are the best options, and then you choose from those options. And that's how the experience should unravel. So why list with me? Again, the team of people that I have, and I will utilize my office staff in these conversations, letting them know how many people I have on my team backing me up to make sure that this process goes as smooth as possible for them. There's very little they have to do after we're listed. And they're gonna, again, if that's the case, there is some things they're gonna do beforehand, but the staging consultant that is free to them, the professional photographers, which by the way, I think that is probably one of the most valuable things we can be using right now. I know it probably seems silly to a lot of us to even say that, but the group that I use for photos, every single seller that I work with is just blown away by how their home looks through the photos, that seals the deal. Which, I mean, again, they're already working with you at that point, but you can use previous listings and say, hey, this is and it may even be helpful for you to take a handful of pictures of a previous listing with your phone, and then take some images of both to say, hey, there's a lot of agents out there that are unfortunately charging a full commission and using their own phone or their own camera and trying to do their own editing software, and they're not photographers. So I would be very cautious of that. And then on the contrary, this is what it looks like. This is the difference between what a home looks like online with somebody's cheap camera compared to having somebody come in using the appropriate cameras and lighting and all of that, because our internet exposure is our only chance. You can try to say there's a lot of other parts of this involved, but I disagree. I think that how we look and present ourselves online is the only opportunity we get, because if they don't move forward there, they're not seeing it anywhere else. They're not attempting to check it out through any other avenue, I guess. So that's our first and last chance. Of course, getting them into the house is what's secondary, but the photos are what do that. So again, those are the being proactive and setting those expectations and making sure that value and condition are good to go before we hit the market is one of the bigger parts of it. Secondarily, I think why list with you is understanding how the rest of the process goes, being able to negotiate confidently and fairly, being able to communicate clearly and letting my clients know, hey, here's something that's really important. We will communicate about absolutely everything. I'm not going to touch base with anybody else before coming to you first. You're going to be an integral part of every part of the negotiation and how I manage and deal with the other realtors and their clients and anybody else throughout the process. And because I work by referral, we have referral partners in almost every other area that you could imagine, so that no matter what we run into, we've got people that can help and support.
Awesome. I absolutely love that. And thank you for bringing up, use your staff, lean on those other folks. If you haven't seen our second, the one we did last week in this series, it was all about value. So if you're looking for some of those ideas, like Chase just said, you need to know your value first so you can communicate it. Definitely go back and watch that session. It was recorded and it was gave some really good ideas as far as what's your value and what's the value of Tucker. And then thank you for bringing up the photos. Nothing drives me crazier, and you on the call probably all know this about me. I will shamelessly make fun of agents that use their phone to take listing photos. It's bizarre when you see like a blurry one or it's a little cockeyed. It's no good. So definitely utilize those professional photographers, and Home Services has some great ones on their squad. Okay, what about the commission objection? When do you get that? How often? And what do you say?
Yeah, I think, well, that's another one of those where I think it's really good to have questions to ask back to that. Because what I think is important is to, first of all, it's absolutely okay and fair for anybody to ask you to negotiate your commission, because we work in a free market. That's just how it works. And I respect the hell out of anybody who does ask that. So I think, number one, we all need to come from a place of understanding and respect when people ask that we don't get offended and we don't get upset, because that only makes the conversation more difficult. So if and when somebody brings it up, thank them for bringing it up. And it's important to talk. And if you weren't going to bring it up, I was going to at some point anyway. So let's talk through this. You want to know what my commission is. Here's what it is. What questions do you have about that? Because the other part is, you don't want to just say the commission. If there's somebody who's timid about that but doesn't like your commission, they might just say okay, and then after you leave, they may go call the next agent who's going to give them a better deal on commission, because you didn't even create an opportunity to explain yourself. So don't assume that if you tell them the commission and they say okay, that they like that or agree to it. Again, being transparent and engaging with them, I think, is so valuable, to say, what questions do you have about that? What is your understanding of commission and how realtors get paid and what that process is like? If they don't seem to have a significant understanding, walk them through it, explain it to them briefly. You don't need to spend 20, 30 minutes on it, but just quickly tell them about how everybody gets paid in the process. And between everyone on this call and I realtors get different splits from their brokerages for different reasons that mean absolutely nothing to the consumer. Unless you're my accountant and you know exactly how all of my finances work, then I make 50% of 50% of the deal. So I make a quarter of the total commission that you offer. And of that quarter that I make, there are a lot of expenses that I have involved in that process. So negotiating my commission down, it does two things. It takes money out of my pocket that eventually I'll no longer have money to help support this process. And then it does the same thing to the agent on the other side of the deal. So in order for this process to go smoothly and as successful as possible, you paying the appropriate commission is a significant value to you as a seller. The other thing that I like to know is that when somebody says, well, we talked to somebody and they charge this much, or our neighbor sold our house with this brokerage and they were a much discounted rate. So my response to that is, good to know. Tell me a little bit more about that agent or that brokerage and what they offer, what they don't offer, how long they've been in the business, what their track record is. Do you know anything at all? Because most likely they're going to go, no, I have no idea. And that's good to hear, because the reason you don't have any idea is because they're not going to tell you. all that person's doing is trying to get a contract. And so if all that person's doing is trying to get a contract, that's all that person's going to be doing when they sell your home. Whoever writes the offer first, or however they can make this move quickly. So the difference between a lot of other realtors and myself is I'm trying to make you as much money as possible in a shortest amount of time as possible. They're just trying to get this done in a short amount of time as possible, because the less you pay them, the less they're going to work for you. And you may not want to agree with that, but that's just facts. That's how it works. I've seen it over and over and over again. So I don't think there's any difference in our industry to anything, any other type of purchase you ever make. Is you get what you pay for. The less you're willing to pay for, depending on the amount of research you do as a homeowner, as a seller, as a consumer, the less you should expect from the process.
Yeah.
Do we need to keep going on that a little bit more? Or are there any questions on that, I guess?
That's super clear. Victoria, did anything come in on that commission question, or any other dialogue questions we should throw out?
I have some other questions, if you're interested in those.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. One of the questions, Chase, and correct me if I'm wrong, was about staging consultants. You pay your staging consultant, correct? Not your client.
I do, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I had another question. Do you do video tours along with photos for every listing?
You know what? I don't. And I guess the reason that I don't is most of the video tours are just a collage of the photos. And so I'm not paying any more money for somebody to just get a slideshow of the same crap that they can look at online. And I know a lot of people would disagree with me, but that's my personal take on it. If a client wants anything more extensive than what I offer, I'm willing to talk through it, depending on what we're dealing with. And again, I think there's value in setting those expectations for them to know you ask me, this is something I do every day. This is not something you do every day. So not that I want to challenge you on that, but the reason I do these things is this is where I see success. So again, depending on the expectations of the client, maybe even the price range of the home, if that's something you feel like or they feel like needs to happen, absolutely. I have not had a lot of pushback on that from clients. So I guess it's just your own personal preference. The more the merrier though, truthfully. The more options you offer them, the more you show what you're doing to market, then I think the more value you're presenting.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you that do want to utilize, don't forget we do have a free version of a video tour. It's called Tucker Tours, and you can pull that off the toolbox once your listing goes live. And it's just what Chase mentioned. It's sort of a slideshow set to music. It is an additional thing that you can add to your listing should you want to. I do it just because it's there and it's free. So just know that that's available for you guys as Tucker agents. Don't go out there and pay anything for that slideshow presentation. You have it for free with Tucker. Yeah. What other questions, Victoria?
Go ahead. So Tucker now allows us to offer a 6% rate. If the seller knows this, how do we tell them that our rate is 7%? It's an uncomfortable conversation.
If the client knows this, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I think a lot of it has to do with how you start out from the get-go. So you might even go into that assuming they know that, because that again, or discussing that here's how this works on both levels. If this discount, if we give you a discount, this is what it looks like. And if we don't, this is what it looks like. So again, I think that has a little bit more to do with how you structure your business. Some agents, it's a non-negotiable. This is what I do every single time. I don't really see a lot of realtors out there that are charging 7% across the board, no matter who they're with right now. So because of that I think is important for you to decide how confident you are in your value and how confident you are at explaining that, clarifying that with your clients. So again, you have to take a stance there. You have to know going into it what you're going to do. I guess, for instance, I'll use an example of I had a situation where it was going to be a me and me with limited agency. And right before we put the offer together, the buyer said, hey, I would like you to reduce your commission so that I can get a better deal on the house. It doesn't affect the seller, it doesn't affect me. And I said, you're absolutely right, but it does affect me. And I don't negotiate my commission. So my commission has nothing to do with your purchase. If you want to write a lower offer, I will represent you in that. But if you want me to negotiate my commission, you're talking to the wrong guy. And I will fight for you and I will work for you, but I do have limited abilities in this process. So if you're not confident in that, I would encourage you to go talk with another realtor. And he went and talked with another realtor, and so be it. Because for me, if I give that away, do you know how difficult it is for me to help represent that person? I don't like you already because we worked all the way up until almost signing on the dotted line, and then you're going to put that pressure on me. And I don't like being cornered. I don't know if any of you have ever felt that way, but it's not a good feeling. So if it doesn't feel good, I wouldn't follow through with it. But you have to know how to stand up for yourself and potentially give that away, give that part of the transaction away. So, I missed out on assisting that person and making, a secondary commission, but that my value to me lies more significantly in my ability to represent and hold my value, because that carries me through longer. So making a couple extra $1,000s in that situation wasn't worth it to me. So again, what does that look like to you? So some of us, I know I'm maybe getting a little bit more philosophical with this question, but maybe you need to sit in understanding what do you think you're worth? And what does that mean to you? Because I'm not kidding you. The feeling of being able to explain my value to that gentleman and watch him walk away was so much more valuable than a couple grand in a check coming in another month or so. So that's how it works for me. That's what's more, I'm way more sustained by being able to speak my truth and know my value than fighting for a discounted rate.
Love that. Awesome. And we will talk a little bit when we get to the resources section here in just a second about what else you can do as far as statistics that will prove, your value, whether it's I'm in an office where we get a higher sale price to list price percentage, which will justify an extra percentage point on the commission, or our homes sell quicker, with FC Tucker versus, the competition. Same thing if you're an agent, you've been around for a while, you obviously have your own statistics that you can use, like I'm sure Chase does. But if you're newer, lean on those statistics of your office or your team or Tucker. I know that we already spent a good chunk of time on that what's my home worth and sort of how Chase kind of gets them to not focus on that number or does not give them a number until we know exactly what's going to be done to prepare the home for market. So I think we can move on from that one. Victoria, do we have any other dialogue question come in?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit. We've got just about 10 minutes left. And I wanted to just reiterate all of the wonderful tools and materials that you guys have available that can help you in these instances. And that's not to say that you need to use all of these every single time, but it all sort of goes back to that initial conversation you have with your seller, what's important to them. That might dictate what you bring to the table, what you'll be prepared with. So, of course, the seller book that we have, some agents have created their own. I think Chase has his own, but you guys all have that seller book that's available on Tucker Toolbox. It's just a nice leave behind piece that will walk a seller through the process. You can always, of course, show them marketing examples. I love the idea of showing photos, maybe from a listing that you had before taken professionally versus one just with your phone. Just kind of gives a nice example of the work that you'll do for them. We talked about price, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on those next two, agent metrics and buy side. Of course, you could use MyBor for your statistics. So I wanted to remind you guys that you have this great tool. So you have a buy side BMA, or a buyer market analysis. And this is that piece that could accompany your listing presentation and show not only what the market activity has been for a home like the one that you're in, that you're hoping to list, but what kind of buyers are out there, who has a saved search on talktotucker.com that could be a match for this home. So this is one of the pages from the BMA. I know it's a little hard to read, but this is that wonderful heat map that shows the darker the color, the higher the concentration of the search activity. So that's a useful piece for you to show your seller. This next one, I love sort of this funnel approach. It just sort of shows of all the online search activity on our website, talktotucker.com, which is the leader in this market. There are, whatever, 1.3 million searches in the last 90 days. And then it drills it down to a specific home like the one that you're sitting in, right? So within the last 90 days, that very bottom of the funnel shows there were over 1,000 online search activities within a 5-mile radius of your home and within that price point, looking for that number of bedrooms that you have. So that's a really telling number to kind of show the activity that's there. But then those of you that have attended a buy-side training with me before, you guys know this is my favorite piece about it. So what this last page in the BMA shows is not only what's all that search activity, but this is a tool where you could pivot with your seller and say, you may be interviewing other realtors, but why list with Christy? I'll tell you why, because as a Tucker agent, I have access to this wonderful tool. Any broker is going to show you what the past market activity has been in your neighborhood. But what they can't tell you are how many buyers have a saved search for a home like yours today. What I can do is reach out directly to those other Tucker agents and hopefully get your home sold more quickly. And that there is a nice compelling story again of we're going to sell faster. You're maybe justifying your commission, obviously justifying why list with you. So this is a tool that all Tucker agents have within buy-side. So check it out, and it just might give you sort of that leg up to sort of seal the deal. So don't forget about this buy-side BMA. And then the other one that I love, the newer tool for all of us as Tucker agents, this is the piece that has replaced trend graphics. So Agent Metrics is what it's called. And there's a couple specific reports that I think are super valuable. Again, I wouldn't necessarily like show my seller every single time, but when I do get that question of why list with you, I might have this information or this statistic in my back pocket. So this particular report, I have it drilled down, I believe by a MIBOR area. I think I did Washington Township, but you can do it by city, by zip code, by the MIBOR numbers, whatever makes sense for that. You can even do it drill down to a neighborhood. So if you know there's a lot of Tucker activities in a particular neighborhood, you could show the market share there and how it is great, right? So we're heads and shoulders above our closest competition within this particular area. So that could be a compelling story. Also in the market share section, you can layer in other filters. So what this one is showing you, I just kind of added those little green numbers. The average home price is the second one. So 344, our next closest competition. I mean, these guys aren't even touching that price point. So that could be a really compelling story. If I'm maybe going to list a home for $300 or $350, our competition, they're lower than that average, might be compelling for that seller. But this other one I have on the top is average sales per agent. So you can see here again, our Tucker agents are doing not quite, but almost double of our next closest competition. So it just kind of shows that we're more full-time agents, we're more productive, etc. Again, I wouldn't necessarily show this to them, but it might be something for you to use. The next one I wanted to remind you about is the pricing tool. So we talked a little bit about pricing with Chase, but this one can be sort of cool. It's not the sexiest thing to always show, but it might be helpful to have in your back pocket. What I have here in red, it shows, and I have it drilled down to like an area and a price point. But what this is showing for those folks that might say, hey, everything you said today, Christy, was great, and I know you think we should be listed at 350, but our neighbors just got 375. I know we don't really have the updates, but let's try it, right? It's a strong market. What you can show them here is the homes that were priced right from the start, right? They didn't have to have a price change. They sold for more money or higher sale price to original price and quicker. 20 days versus a home that even just had one price change went up to 102 days. So that can be a compelling story when you are talking pricing, why to not go high, not, you know, if the value isn't justified. So I just kind of wanted to remind you of those specific tools that are available in Agent Metrics that may be helpful depending on the client that you're talking to. This one is that same pricing tool. It just shows a breakdown of the attributes of homes within these specific ranges. You know, do they have, what kind of square footage do they have? How many beds, how many baths? Can be compelling again. Okay, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, you wanna, what you're trying to list at is not accurate for a home with a 3-bed. That's more of a home with a 4-bed, something like that. And then finally, the other tool that I love in Agent Metrics is this market dynamics. This can be helpful for those of you that are finding sellers, maybe even sellers specifically, are hesitant to maybe list because of the COVID pandemic. And this is kind of a nice way to show what the market has done in recent history and how it's trending. So what I like about this particular screen I'm showing you, these sold prices have actually gone up since the beginning of March by almost 5%, another great compelling story for a seller. And the number of homes is going up again. It's sort of trending up. And you can kind of see, you know, again, hard to read, but in March where things sort of dipped down a little bit, but they're sort of trending back up. So just know that you guys have these specific tools available should you need them. I would highly recommend familiarizing yourself with them and just having some statistics or some information in your back pocket. A tailored approach is kind of what we're going to end on today. I would just say, and I'll let Chase kind of share his thoughts too, but you know, making sure what you're presenting is what's in line with what's important to that seller, right? I'm not going to pull out a million statistics if I can tell that my person sitting across the table doesn't care. They just want whatever it is, whether it's a quick sale or whatever. So just be sure that you're asking those good questions on the front end, on that initial call, and then again at the table, so you can tailor your approach and your presentation. Chase, anything to add to that sort of last slide there on making things tailored?
Yeah, honestly, maybe whether it's tailored or it's going out of your way, one last thing I wanted to bring up, and it was kind of relevant to, I guess, your previous slide as well, is what are those things that we're doing to go above and beyond, not just at presenting stats, but just showing all of the value we have and the tools we have. So again, in a market like this where things are moving so quickly, there's something I think that all of us should be taking advantage of. And the response that I get from my sellers as I do this currently is outstanding. They absolutely love this. So whenever I know that we're getting ready to list, or I have a client who's wanting to know value and potentially put their home on the market, I'll look through their neighborhood, and if I can find anything comparable that's especially pending or recently sold, I will call that agent and say, hey, would you mind letting me know if there were any agents who showed your property who their buyers missed out and they really liked it? Could you get me in touch with that agent because I have a listing coming up in that neighborhood? Or do you have anybody who's contacted you, other agents specifically, interested in your listing? Is there somebody you can connect with as a potential buyer to let them know you might know of an upcoming listing? And it helps everybody out. It shows your seller that you potentially have people in the hopper ready to go and waiting for their place to hit the market. It also shows them that you're well connected in your industry and you stay in touch with the other agents, and I think that's extremely valuable. And then it shows these other agents that you care about them too. It's not just that you're trying to get new business, but you're saying, hey, how can I help you out? Do you have anybody who missed out on your property who this could be a good fit for? Because I'll keep you updated. And if it's somebody that wants to get in prior to us listing because they want to avoid a multiple offer situation, I'll see if the sellers would be open to that. So it just creates opportunity in a market where maybe you think we don't need to because things are just selling so quickly and we don't have to put the extra effort in. But that extra effort is what helps present our value. It helps these sellers see that we're not just looking to get good photos and throw a sign in the yard and cross our fingers and then get a commission in 30 days. the reason that I charge what I do is because I put so much heart and effort into making sure that we make you as much money as possible in a short amount of time as possible. So all those little extras, I guess I would just say, just sit in this for a bit. Think about what you can be doing, get creative, coming up with alternative ways to market the home prior to listing, as long as you're being ethical. And then presenting that to your sellers. Say, hey, I've got a couple ideas that I think might be fun, or I've got a couple of things that I've looked into so far, and I already know that there's a handful of people out there that are probably just waiting for us to go live. So I think we're in good shape. Or hey, I tested our value. I talked to a couple of people about what we thought the price should be, and they're in agreement. So I think we're in good shape. All of that type of stuff, I think from a seller's perspective, is it gives them warm and fuzzy feelings about agreeing to pay you what you're worth in a market where a lot of people are giving discounted rates.
And I think that really underscores, you mentioned you're an agent that's built his business primarily by referral. And those are the kind of things I would imagine, Chase, that those sellers are picking up the phone and calling their friends and saying, oh my gosh, can you believe that he did this? And we got under contract before we even went on the market, or we showed the home, or he connected me with potential buyers. Like, those are the kinds of things people will talk about and share. So that above and beyond, I just sort of love that philosophy. That's really cool. And you're making a great reputation with the other agents. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm not saying I'll put this out there because I saw a Cass Pyatt is on this. I think he's still on this call. First of all, thank you. Just being good to other agents in our industry, and going the extra mile with them, being thankful, being helpful, being supportive. Cass left some just really good feedback on a listing that I have that my sellers read, and his feedback was supportive of me. He said, you have a great agent, he's doing an amazing job. And my sellers called me right away and they're like, did you see this feedback? We knew we hired you for a reason. And so that wasn't me. That was Cass just doing a good job at being a good supporting agent. And his comments solidified my client's level of trust and respect in me, which again just makes everybody feel better. So I think the more we can do that type of stuff, it's just going to continue to support each other, support our industry at a time where things are a bit shaky. So yeah, man, just take care of everybody around you and things should be fine.
And I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And, also too, when we're up against other agents in multiple offers, I mean, we all know the folks
Absolutely.
that have those good reputations that are supportive versus those that maybe aren't. So be that supportive agent. It will carry you and your clients pretty far. So cool. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Quick recap. I think we covered all of that wonderful stuff. Victoria, do we have maybe one other final question before we wrap up?
I have one more question, Chase. Christy talked about buy side and agent metrics. Are there any other tools that you use when you're gathering your research and things like that?
Beyond that, beyond just using all of the systems that we've already discussed, I don't think so. Again, aside from utilizing like previous showings from my own listings, or again, getting other realtors engaged and involved prior to listing just to gather information, I think that's one additional avenue that maybe we don't do as much. But what that does is that continues to engage as many people as possible so that we're creating, a successful environment. But all of those things are great tools. What I would say is be knowledgeable and informed on as many of those as possible. Just don't feel like you have to use every single one of them in every presentation. That's where I think the tailored approach is good. Have it all available, know what you're talking about, know what you could say or speak to in any of those regards, but only utilize the ones that have value to you and to your client in that moment, so that you're not just regurgitating what you feel like is some type of a sales pitch. Because I just feel like people, they catch on to that. They want to know what you know, not what you think they should know, right? It's more important to get connected with them, and then from that connection, share the valuable information that you think is best fit for that particular client.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, thank you. Sorry, we went just a few minutes over, but it was such good content today. Chase, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your insight. It's always so valuable For those of you attending the call today, thank you. This could not be possible with all of you guys tuning in. Just as a reminder, we will be sending out the recording from the Tucker Training email address by the end of the day tomorrow, and we'll send the slides as well. People tend to kind of like those slides. So thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, guys.